Exploring career paths and opportunities, enlightening students by helping them develop essential skills, and connecting them to the professional world. We bridge the gap between undergraduates and their future careers. We are UP CAPES. Unparalleled commitment, agility, professionalism, excellence, and service since 1991.
Achieving a vision involves consistent little efforts. Planning out our objectives, focusing on the process. We lay down the groundwork, and maybe we reap rewards. However, while there are many paths to greatness, we shouldn't limit ourselves to taking just one route. Small steps matter. And with guidance, you'll be one step closer to achieving your dream.
This event wouldn't be possible without our company partners. Career Development Month 2020 is co-presented by UP CAPES and INKOMPASS in partnership with Accenture, Analog Devices, JPMorgan Chase Company, Maxim Integrated, Mondelēz Philippines, Nestlé Philippines, Texas Instruments Philippines Incorporated, and Unilever Philippines.
Wake up, London. Rise and shine, Shanghai. What's up, Mumbai? New York, New York. Get out of bed. Greet the day. It's time to make a difference. Forge ahead with new ideas and work together. You'll dream bigger. After all, you're an artist, an athlete, a tech enthusiast, a role model. Remember, your differences make us stronger, make us smarter, more innovative. It's in our culture at JPMorgan Chase, our DNA. Every career is designed with you in mind, to make an impact, to lead.
Extremely impactful.
Because the chance of a lifetime is all in a day's work. And when the day is done, you refresh, refuel, and get ready for tomorrow. So good night, Rome. Sleep tight, Sydney. Sweet dreams, Tokyo. We'll see you in the morning.
We are the makers and bakers of Mondelēz International, the world's leader in global snacking. Our future has never been brighter, tastier, healthier, sweeter, crunchier, or bolder.
We're pushing the boundaries of what's possible with fresh questions, ideas, and perspectives. We are ready to disrupt.
It's our mission to lead the future of snacking around the world by offering the right snack for the right moment made the right way. We are snacking made right.
This opens up exciting possibilities because if you make it with us, you make it with pride.
You'll work with brands that people fall in love with. They remind us of our childhood, the warmth, the delight, the memories.
We are constantly innovating for the future. As our world and tastes change, so do we.
With us, you make it uniquely yours because we want you, just as you are, leaning in, speaking up, and challenging your limits.
With us, you make it a better world. Being global isn't about being big. It's about being part of something bigger than yourself.
A place where the world is yours to protect as well as enjoy. A place where days are filled with different voices, different possibilities, different cultures, but driven by the same shared purpose, empowering people to snack right.
With us, you make it happen.
We're hungry to seize every opportunity and stretch towards new challenges, loving what we do, but not taking ourselves too seriously.
With us, you'll have the space to make a difference, to do more, learn more, and grow more.
Make it with pride.
Make it uniquely yours.
Make it a better world.
Make it happen.
Make it with Mondelēz International. Snacking made right.
Every day, we are changing the world. We are dreamers. And we are doers. We pride ourselves on perfecting the small. Our 30,000 employees design, manufacture, test and sell tens of thousands of products, tiny electronic chips that are key ingredients in things you experience every day. Look around you. We are there. From connected cars to intelligent homes, from self-monitoring health devices to automated factories. Our technologies are adding intelligence to every type of electronic system, making them safer, smarter, and more efficient. With our global sales team of engineers, our website with deep technical resources, our broad portfolio of products, and our investments in our own advanced manufacturing, we have a unique approach to helping our customers make their design dreams a reality. And along the way, we remain true to our deeply rooted values of integrity, innovation, and commitment. Wherever our ingenuity shines, new possibilities emerge. Chip by chip, design by design. At TI, we are creating world-changing technologies every day, and we can't wait for tomorrow.
Ma, di ako makatulog.
Lika anak, may kwento ko sa'yo. Isang araw, tumigil ang mundo. At nagsitago ang mga tao sa kanilang mga bahay. Ngunit nagsimula ang tulungan at napawi ang pangamba. Nakita nila na mayroong pag-asa. Dahil ang bawat isa ay nagpakita ng malasakit.
Malasakit?
Ang malasakit ay ang lubos na pagpapahalaga sa kapwa na napupudyok sa iyo na kumilos sa tumulong. Malasakit para sa kalusugan ng bawat isa. Malasakit para sa kabuhayan ng bawat Pilipino. At malasakit para sa lahat. Pero di dito nagtatapos ang kwento. Sa bawat malasakit na naranasan, naipadama pa siya sa iba. Sa malinis na pangangatawan, sa ligtas na tahanan, at sa sarap ng kainan. Pag tuloy-tuloy ang malasakit, tuloy-tuloy ang pag-asa. Ito ang ating kwento. Kwentong totoo at nagsisimula ito sa'yo.
Kahit ako?
Oo.
Hi everyone, I am Andrew and I'll be your host for today. Welcome to Career Development Month 2020. Hello to our YouTube viewers. This is the first time UP CAPES is holding this event. For the month of November, we will be having different initiatives to equip engineering students for their future careers. Please stick around because we have so much in store for you today. This week's talks are all about engineering your ideas. Through Career Development Month, we can create plans and materialize them through practical guides and tips needed to succeed in such endeavors. Today, we will be learning about project management. But before we start, I'd like all of us to take a look back when UP CAPES launched its year-long campaign last September. Small but consistent steps are essential to any career development journey. Career Development Month is one such step that can help you gain relevant career skills, ultimately taking you one step closer to your dream career. All right, I'm sure everyone here is so excited to hear the talk. Let us now introduce our speaker for today. Mr. Mervin Chan is currently the manager of the Project Management Office of Philip Morris International. He is a certified project management professional with experience from IBM, HCX Technology Partners, Sutherland, and Philip Morris International. Indeed, an expert in the field of project management, Mr. Chan has a lot of tips and techniques to share with us today. Let's all welcome our speaker to tell us all about project management.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for the introduction. It's the first time I'm doing this. It's very 2020, but let's have everything ready for today. Number one, have the timer, have a pen, and have lots of paper ready. Once you have that, let's start doing the exercise. I need you to set your timer to 2 minutes, and I need you to engineer the following. Have 3 5-story buildings, and have 5 electric posts to supply power to the buildings. How does that work? Use your creativity, use your pen, use your paper. Start the 2 minutes now. Two minutes is up. How have you done? Were you able to complete all of the projects that you were supposed to do? The buildings as well as the electric posts. Now, add another minute to the timer and there's a change in whatever you need to complete. I need you to add 3 bridges, or at least draw bridges to connect all 3 buildings, and have greenhouses at the top of each building. Do that now. One minute is up. Reflect. Were you able to finish the tasks that were required? Were you able to complete the deliverables? Did you do it at all? Only you would know that. It's a virtual event. Let's see how you did, right? That being said, let's go back to that later. I want to talk about Project Management 101. And project management has been in existence for many decades now. And as we do it, and as technologies and as time progresses, there are so many changes that are happening specific to project management. What I want to talk to you about today would be the basics. And these are basics that are the foundations of what project management is. What is a project? There is one picture there that you would see. And there's another picture here that you would see. It's not that clear specific to the slide, but I want to focus on these 2 pictures again. That's an airplane. And usually I'd ask what business or what picture this would be. This is a picture of the CN Tower in Toronto. What do these pictures have in common? First one is an A380, which was launched, at least the first flight was in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. Please Google, fact check everything. And the second picture is the CN Tower, which used to be the world's tallest structure. I'm no longer sure what the world's tallest structure is. Again, I would advise you to fact check and Google everything. What do these 2 pictures have in common? They were both projects. They started as early as the 1990s, if I'm not mistaken, for the A380. And for the CN Tower, it's all on Wikipedia. Research it. When did they start doing that? But effectively, there was an end to these projects. There was an end to when the airplane would have flown, when they would have transitioned or transferred it over to operations, as well as the building of the CN Tower somehow had to stop. They had to put all the embellishments, and that was it. Project done. And then as engineers, you would know that there's maintenance that's happening for both the airplane and the building. That being said, if you were able to answer that, give yourself a pat on the back. Or if you did get the right answer, please contact your UP CAPES representative to give you prizes, or if they will give you virtual high fives. You will be able to know what to get and to ask from them. Okay, with that, I want to define the basics of what a project is. What is a project? At this point, I would usually have someone come to the front or hold the mic and read what a project is. We want to make it as interactive as possible, so go ahead and read this with me. A project is temporary in that it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore defined scope and resources. Again, I'd like to emphasize temporary. Use your thesaurus, use Google, use your dictionary. Temporary meaning it's time-bound. It's not going on forever. The second picture, the one with an org chart. Again, let's read this together. A project is unique in that it is not a routine operation, but a specific set of operations designed to accomplish a singular goal. Emphasis on unique, meaning one of a kind, special. Ask yourself, are you special? Are you one of a kind? Are you unique? Are you a project? That's something that you would have to talk to your philosophy teachers or professors about. But let's stick to what it is specific to this project management talk. Who does a project? It's a project team that includes people who don't usually work together, sometimes from different organizations and across multiple geographies. So that being said, there's always a team that's working on a project that is temporary, unique, one of a kind. Going back to the two pictures that we had earlier, the Airbus A380 is a consortium of people from all around the world. They had to come up with the different parts of the wings, the composites, the tail, the engines. All of these were manufactured in different places. They were assembled in France, and effectively they had to be flown or shipped across the world or across Europe for them to be able to build it, for it to be able to fly. And then they had to do all the tests for everything to ensure that the project was a success. Same thing with the CN Tower. There were lots of materials that had to be imported from different sources in Canada. They had to do everything. They had to build all the things for them to be able to build up, for them to be able to put the lights on, to put the foundation on, and to put everything, as well as the restaurant on top, as well as the viewing deck. So all of those people had to work on them. There were, I'm sure, thousands, if not millions of man-hours spent for these projects to be considered complete and successful. That being said, that's what the project is. That's what a project is. That's what the two pictures represent. Now, because this is project management, it's as if we're going back to our basics, to our 101. What is project management? All of these are actually lifted from PMI.org, the institution, not PMI, our company. So that's a quick definition that I'd like to emphasize as early as now, but we'll see how it is going to apply later. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. What were the project requirements specific to the Airbus A380? For a plane to have around 600 to 800 people to fly from one place to another. For the CN Tower, it's for it at that time to be the world's tallest structure, to have an observation deck, for it to stand as a pride of Toronto, as a pride of Canada, which you would have to double check. They're all on Google. Please fact check and send me an email and send your UP CAPES representatives email if these are not correct. But that was the specific requirement. That was the specific thing or goal that they needed to accomplish. The techniques that they had to use all the knowledge that they had. For them to be able to fly a new plane, a double-decker, they had to do lots of testing prior to it being flown so that there would be no fatalities when they do the testing. For them to be able to build the world's tallest structure at that point, they had to check and engineer and ensure that the base was stable, it was firm. They had to get the right tools. What were the right tools? They had to get their computer software. If at that point they did not have computer software for the CN Tower, they went to their drafting tables. They had to do all their measurements. The skills that the people they needed to work with and the people that they needed to have, the knowledge that those folks had to have. They had to be experts in engineering and aeronautics, in wind and hydraulics, in wind temperature, pressure, whatever, all those things that you would learn in your basic physics, in your engineering 101, in the different classes that you have in the engineering building, and in your AS building, from your math to your everything. Putting all those things together for them to be able to ensure that the project requirements would be met. That being said, that's what project management is. So let's move on to the next slide. You would see that these are the project constraints because not everything is unlimited. Remember, one of the things that we had was, it was limited, it was temporary, and that meant that we had to work with different things. You would hear that there is a term called triple constraint in project management. This used to be the term back in the day when I was studying in college, used to be triple constraint. Why? And if I can show the classic project constraints, it's your cost, scope, and time. That means if you would want to make your project much shorter, then you would probably decrease your scope and increase your cost. So the triangle would actually change shapes, but it would still be a triangle. And in the middle, that's where your equality would be. Therefore, a few years later, I'm not exactly sure when, they became the triple constraint in project management, which actually looks like the Star of Israel or the Star of David, wherein you still have your cost, scope, and time, but then you would have to manage your risk, resources, and quality. So that's when it started to evolve. And as I was saying earlier, whatever I learned in project management when I was studying and when my mentors were working, those have evolved for these to be able to cater to the needs of what's needed in the industry, what's needed in the different problems or scopes or concerns that they're trying to address. That being said, I have one graphic here for everyone that these are the 6 projects or 6 constraints of a project. Again, you might check next year, there might be 7, 8, or 9, and all of these are actually measured or mentioned in the Project Management Book of Knowledge, or PMBOK, as many people call it around the world. And in the Philippines, it's usually called as PMBOK, but up to you how to describe or to pronounce that. Let's go through it one by one. At this point, again, I usually have one volunteer from the audience read these constraints of a project. Let's start with the first one, the red one, scope. When we say scope, the question that you need to answer is, what exactly is the expected outcome? Does that mean that the airplane will fly 1,000 kilometers or 8,000 kilometers? Time, by when should the output be delivered? The plane should fly by 2003, 2007, 2020, or beyond. Cost, how much money is available to achieve this outcome? How much do you have for you to be able to accomplish the goal that you have actually set at the start? Is it 1 million pesos, $1 million, or in the case of the A380, was it billions of euros that would actually increase and balloon because of the delays that they have encountered? Now let's move on to the additional constraints. Let's go to quality. How close does the outcome match the expectations? Yes, you were able to build a plane with 4 engines that can accommodate 800 people, but it can only fly 1,000 kilometers. But you needed this to fly from Manila to New York or from London to Singapore. But the range can only have from Singapore to Beijing. Then was it actually a success? How do you measure the quality? Resources, who and what is required to do the work? You can also include the time here, wherein who, what, when, and where would the work be required to do. So as I mentioned earlier, the A380 was actually a combination of the different parts. Each part, the wings were created somewhere, the body was created somewhere, the tail was created somewhere, hydraulics, the wheels, they were created in different parts of the world, in different parts of Europe. And then risk. What can go wrong and what can be done about it? When you're flying an airplane or creating or building an airplane, when you're engineering one, what is the first thing that can go wrong? 1, it can crash. 2, it may not be able to fly. 3, it may be too heavy. 4, it might be too light. It might not be as stable as you were hoping it to be. What are the things that we can do to mitigate these risks for us to be able to address these such that when we actually do it, we would know, or once we encounter these risks, we would know what we can do to address them. So these are the different constraints that you have to a project. And now, those are the things that you would have to remember. Let's go back to the activity that we had at the start. If you did it, what were the constraints that we had? You had your time limit. Initially, it was 2 minutes. You had to come up with your scope, which was initially your buildings and your electric posts. And then after that, there was a change. We added 1 minute for you to be able to come up with bridges that connect the buildings and greenhouses such that the people would have food to eat when they get locked down. It's very 2020. So what are those things that we hit? We hit our scope, we hit our time. In terms of cost, while we were not able to simulate it properly, how much money did it actually cost to engineer and build those buildings, to build the additional bridges, to have the additional greenhouses on top? Because you had 2 minutes to do the buildings, how close was the quality of these buildings to what you had imagined at the start before you actually started drawing or doodling? And how different was it from the actual expected output? Resources. If you had just one small sheet of paper, were you able to squeeze everything in together in one short piece of paper, or did you have additional or separate sheets of paper or Post-its for you to be able to work with those? And then the risks. What can go wrong? If you hit your pen or your pencil and the lines were extended, what is it that you would have to do? Did you use a pencil? You could use your eraser. If you used a pen, then you would have your liquid paper or your correction pen. If you used a pentel pen or a marker, then you could probably add some designs to it. That's your risk mitigation. So those are the things that we actually applied in the simulation, if you did it. And now we're trying to apply how things are in terms of project constraints and applying it on a simulated personal level in 2020. That being said, at this point, I would usually ask if there are questions or comments or inputs from the audience, but since I'm talking to a virtual audience, I will move on to the next set of slides. The next set of slides actually goes through and talks about the project management processes. As I mentioned earlier, Project Management Institute is actually the body that ensures that all these things would be reviewed on a regular basis, and that they would be coming up with the project management process for the project management to be able to improve. What are the standards that can be applied? And all of these would actually be applied across all projects. One watch out, the Project Management Institute is one of the many institutes or organizations that comes up with all these standards. Do your Google research, do your fact checking, because there are many practices or schools of thought in terms of project management. There are many things that you would see. You would be able to see your Prince2, you'd be able to see your Scrum, your Agile, etc. Project Management 101 focuses on these basics. Usually they have all their interfaces here, but if you have any questions on those, we can talk about it. Send me a note or send your UP CAPES representatives some notes, how to contact me. You have they have my details, they can bridge. But what I want to focus here is that there are 5 major project management processes. In this chart, we added one more, and we'll go through that later. But usually it starts with initiating. When you start a project, the first thing that you would want to do is identify what are the project objectives that we have. And as we stated earlier, it was to fly the plane, to come up with the world's tallest structure at the time. Identify who your project manager is. So PM identified. Who is the overall person accountable for ensuring that the project actually moves? Think of it this way. If the project is successful, who will stand up to get the Emmy Award or the Oscar? If the project is not successful, who will be sitting on the electric chair to be killed? Or who would be going on a platform, who would be guillotined to say that he's a project manager, he's the one overall accountable and responsible for everything. In the initiating part or the process, you also know what your constraints are, and you know the authorization levels, meaning you would know who your shareholders are, who your stakeholders are, who will be providing the approvals. So in the case of the airplane, who would be providing the safety approvals for you to be able to fly, who would be providing the sign-offs that yes, the wing is good, who's your quality control, etc. Identify who those people are. Now you move on to planning. In planning, you come up with your statement of work. That is coming up with your detailed, these are your key deliverables. These are the things that are in scope, out of scope. You document everything. You go through a project plan, and the project plan is not just your timeline. It goes through your communications plan, your stakeholder management, everything else, how to manage your HR, how to manage your risk, how to manage the people that you work with, the constraints that you would be doing, your government officials, your internal stakeholders, etc. Have everything ready and documented and presented, and ensure that everything is there. You would need to come up with your glossary, wherein all your terms, such that if there's jargon that you use, you'd be able to say, all right, this is what it means. If there are some initials that you're using, or for example, you use UP-CAPES. What does UP-CAPES stand for? Then you would have to document it there, that this is what it means. You come up with your assumptions, your constraints, and your critical success factors. Similar to what we discussed earlier, your assumptions, you have to say, we assume that, we think that, so that you would be able to document and say that this is what you have. It's similar to your problem set. When you have your problem set, you come up with your assumptions when you provide the solution. Your constraints, we discussed that earlier. Your critical success factors, what will make you say that the project is successful? Identify what those are. And in the planning stage, you would also know when to provide updates to your project plan. Now, as soon as you're done with your planning, you do these two things simultaneously. You control the project and you execute the project. Let's start with executing, because that's where usually things happen, at least in terms of your logic. When you execute, you come up with your project deliverables. A deliverable is actually the lowest breakdown of the task or of anything that you need to do, such that you would be able to come up with something tangible for the project to say, all right, we need to be able to do this. Let's take your airplane, for example. A deliverable could be an engine, a wing, the tail, whatever the cockpit avionics are. So when you break the entire project down, then you would be able to focus on, all right, here are the things that I need to do to be able to complete the engine. These are the tasks and activities that I need to be able to do to complete the wing. And then once you have all those, then you just put all the parts of the airplane together, put those are your project deliverables, and then you assemble the airplane, the final product, and that's your final deliverable. What makes the deliverable acceptable? So you come up with, all right, if I get these, if the engine fires up or reaches 500 or pushes the airplane to have a thrust of 500 miles per hour. I'm not even sure if I'm using the right terms, but you need to be able to come up with those. The wing should be specific, should have the following sizes. Should be 73 meters by 25 meters by 3 meters or something. You need to be able to come up with those. You need to be able to provide the actual effort and completion data. That means you need to be able to estimate and have the estimate of X number of man hours and how long did it complete? Was it on track, or were we delayed, or were we ahead of schedule? And the change requests. Change requests will be part of your projects. Similar to the simulation that we had for the personal activity that we had, there was a change request. And we had to add those greenhouses as well as the bridges. And you will have issues. Never ever assume that a project will not have issues. Let's take it to your day-to-day. What time did you plan to wake up? Did you really wake up at that time? Or were you planning to complete your assignment or homework by 5 p.m. today? If not, then what were the things that you needed to do to adjust for you to be able to meet your homework, to be able to eat lunch, dinner, eat your snack, go out, buy your groceries, or do anything wherever it needs to happen? A project will incorporate and will have issues. Sometimes issues give birth to new issues. You would be able to document all of these. You would need to be able to know how to address these. That being said, we have the controlling part wherein you actually assess your performance and you provide your status reports. You provide your status reports to whom? To your stakeholders, be it internal or external. You plan your change requests. Not all change requests will happen. If I were let's take the airplane again, for example. If I would just say that I want the airplane to be in maroon, who said so? What gives me the authority to say that the airplane needs to be maroon? Why can it not be white or blue or green? So those things have to actually be done as a project team, and you would need to know what those authorization levels are as part of the initiating process. Your change management results have to also be documented. Your issues management results also have to be documented. Remember, controlling is where you ensure that your quality assurance happens. So we go back to the constraints that we had earlier in the previous slide. Know how to ensure that there is quality, know how to manage your resources, your risks, and the constraints that we have specific to the project. After you go back and forth through your executing and controlling, specific to the A380, this got extended so many times, they had so many change requests, you eventually get to close the project. You get to do your product and vendor evaluations. Was the product good enough? Was the vendor good enough? Were there misses here? What is the acceptance documentation? Usually this is a checklist of things that needs to happen, right? What are the legal things that need to be closed? What were their contracts that need to be closed? Are there budgets that need to be closed? If your budget at the start of the program / project was actually 2 million euros, and then at the end of the project, 10 years later, you're at 20 million euros, how do you account for the 18 million euros difference? You need to be able to do that and say, all right, here's where it is. And somehow you need to be able to ensure that you archive your project documents such that when someone wants to look at it, if someone wants to do an audit, someone wants to double check what things are, if there is, knock on wood, a crash 20, 30, 50 years down the road, they would be able to see and check what was the design like? Why was it designed like this? That has to be documented because 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, you might not be. Usually you're no longer involved with the project. Someone else has taken over on that, or you might not be part of this world anymore, but you need to do that. And as part of your closing, you need to redeploy your resources. The project is done. Most of the work is done. So what will the resources do? They move on to other things. You cannot be stuck there forever. And you have to finally close your, or at least identify what your outstanding issues and changes are and hand it over to whoever is going to handle the project. And that's when it becomes part of your business as usual / or maintenance or your operations or whatever term it's actually called. And this is what I was saying. Those are the 5 projects or processes that we have from PMBOK. But what's being added usually is your ongoing cross-project improvement. This is where you do your retrospective and when you reflect. What is it that went well? What were the best practices? What can we improve on? Were there issues that we could have avoided? So that once we document these, the people who work on their projects would be able to know and apply these lessons learned to future projects. Thus, we go back to the personal activity we had at the start of this session. How did you find it? Were you able to complete the changes? Were you able to complete the initial results? You would have to come up with those retrospectives, those lessons learned, and you would discuss it as a project team. That's an overview of your project management processes. And within those processes are 10 additional knowledge areas. So usually this is a matrix. Do your Google, search it, you would see how things are. And this is what I was telling you earlier, that a project plan does not just mean your timeline. You need to be able to document and come up with your scope management, your time management, your cost management, quality management, human resource management, communications management, risk management, procurement management, stakeholder management, and integration management. All of these things, you need to be able to stitch them together such that a product, a cohesive report / deliverable / something would be given to your stakeholders for you to be able to say, here's where we are, this is what the project is. So these are the 10 PM knowledge areas as well as your 5 processes. Again, this is based on your PMBOK 6th edition. When I was studying it was still the 3rd edition. Over the past X number of years, we've gone from 3rd edition to the 6th edition. There might be a 7th edition next year or even 8th edition. So this is what I'm saying, that there is a body that actually comes up with all these things to ensure that we're still following the best processes, the best standards, and we come up with the lessons learned and the best practices to be applied moving forward. That being said, what's the value to me? At this point, I can usually come up and pull someone and say, can we read this? But since it's a virtual event, let's read this together. Project management brings a unique focus shaped by the goals, resources, and schedule of each project. The value of that focus is proved by the rapid worldwide growth of project management. Note worldwide growth of project management. I mentioned at the start of this talk, project management has been in existence for decades, but industries are catching up. Companies are coming up with their own project management offices, program management offices, and that's where I was able to work with, and based on the introduction, I was able to work with the different project management offices of the different organizations that I've been part of. However, let's zoom it in, let's put our scope. What does it mean to be a UP student, a UP CAPES member attending this talk? What does it mean for me? Therefore, PM can be, and I'd like to note that project management and Philip Morris can be a subject for training and education, and it can also be a career path. You would see in the background, we have our INKOMPASS program for our interns. Visit our IG site, visit the website. It's inkompass.global. You can see there, what are the things that we do? You saw the video earlier. It is indeed a subject for training and education. Most, if not all, of the interns that we worked with had their projects, had their deliverables. They had to come up with their objective and their problems that they needed to solve at the end of 8-9 weeks. They needed to be able to provide something. So, that being said, it is a subject for training and education. It is a career path. Now what? We'd like to invite you to know what it is to be different for your INKOMPASS internship journey. And this is very special because the last intern that we have as part of the INKOMPASS team, one of the interns there was actually an engineering student, and she was able to engineer a system. And I will go through this very quickly. That she found out based on the different interviews that there was limited time, that there was fatigue from projects, and that there was low visibility across the projects that we had as an organization within Philip Morris. Therefore, she was able to say that this is the challenge. The key problem was tasks among employees within normal working hours is not balanced. The goal was to identify parameters that are important to project managers and members for matching purposes. The scope was project resourcing and matching. So for projects listed under the project management office. And what was the measure of success? The measure of success was that these projects actually needed to be seen. They needed to be seen by the organization, but there was no system that was doing that. So her goal was to come up with a POC/proof of concept. She did so many interviews with different people across the organization within the Philippines. And fast forward to the different steps that she took, she came up with a project resource allocation tool or proof of concept to improve morale, to provide growth, to provide recognition and rewards, to increase people engagement, to develop the talent pool, and to deliver the intended benefits, as well as better results. And she was able to come up with this. It was using Excel, and you would see these are the different cards that we had, and everything was just Excel. And she was able to come up with a supply for the projects as well, or supply for the resources, the people in the office, as well as the demand for the projects. And then what happened? She was able to apply fast-forward principles, project management principles in creating the prototype, consumer centricity and rapid ideation. And she was able to get feedback from the customers that she was talking to. And what happened? That proof of concept has now been developed and is being developed into a full-fledged system that is going to be used by the entire organization worldwide. So from the Philippines, she was able to come up with a minimal viable product, proof of concept. It was improved upon by experts in IT, an engineering student, came up with the dynamics. She engineered how it works. It was applied by an IT person, an IT programmer, and a group of people. And now it is being tested for it to be deployed sometime in 2021. That being said, UP CAPES, thank you so much. I hope you were able to enjoy what project management is. That's Project Management 101. And I hope to see you soon sometime in the office as being part of the INKOMPASS team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chan, for that wonderful presentation. So, how's everyone after our project management talk? Please stick around because we still have our Q&A session after this. This event wouldn't be possible without our company partners. Career Development Month 2020 is co-presented by UP CAPES and INKOMPASS in partnership with Accenture, Analog Devices, JPMorgan Chase Company, Maxim Integrated, Mondelēz Philippines, Nestlé Philippines, Texas Instruments Philippines Incorporated, and Unilever Philippines. All right, now we will be having our Q&A session. So, Mr. Chan, are you ready for our questions?
Sure.
All right, so for our first question, what is the most desired skill that is required to become a successful project manager according to your experience?
It's quite hard to answer, but I'd like to say that project management is a changing, evolving tool or skill set. So I think in life, it's being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So that's very applicable in life as well as in the office and in many aspects of project management.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Chan. Let's proceed to our next question. How do you ensure your team stays on track to meet project deadlines? What are your strategies for monitoring and prioritizing delegated responsibilities?
Two things, at least top of mind. Number one is communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Being a project manager, being in project management means that you are not working alone. You're always part of something. And that means you need to be able to work and relate and be able to communicate properly with your team members. The second one is a tool, whatever tool that is, be it a manual tool, a board that you're using, or a software that you're using. You would be able to know what these deliverables are, what are the the items that need to be done by each project member, by each project resource, when would they be needed, and where are we on those? And you need to be able to come up with your meetings, your regular meetings. What I usually do is we have what we call a daily stand-up, 15 minutes start of the day, and then another 5 minutes end of the day, 20 minutes total. No talk, as very quickly, where are you, what help do you need? And if there is an additional discussion that needs to happen, then you would have to schedule a separate meeting for that.
All right, thank you for that. For our next question, in project meetings, how do you convince everyone to pitch in ideas?
There has to be that trust within the team as well as your stakeholders that there are no stupid ideas. So if you put in your mind that there is already a way to do this, then you have just broken the creativity measure or creativity mindset that your team should have. So you need to be able to encourage and work with people to be able to say that these aren't their ideas. So usually there are many ways to do that. You can come up with creative thinking, discussions, coming up with Post-its, pen and paper. Just always mention that there is no such thing as a crazy idea. There is no such thing as a stupid question. It's much better to know what things are. And one of the things that I learned as part of project management is never ever assume, because assuming makes an ass out of you and me.
All right, thank you for that. Next, what role does formal education play in project management? Is one's college degree a big factor in their performance as a project manager?
I'd like to say that it does not, your formal education does not play a big factor, especially now wherein learning can be done. And it goes back to where I was saying, whatever we learned specific to programming when I was back in college, they're no longer the tools that are being taught now. However, some of the tools that are programming languages that are needed now were actually programming languages that were taught in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So that's really where it's your learn, unlearn, and relearn thinking comes in play. But for you to be able to be a successful project manager, it's being able to live with change, know how to deal with change, and being able to communicate properly to whoever the different stakeholders you have. So I hope that answered your question.
All right, that sure did. All right. Next, for you, what is the most challenging step of project management?
At least from my point of view, the most challenging step is usually your closure document, because that's where you have to ensure that everything that you did and everything that I talked about would be documented, and somehow you would be able, the documents should be able to speak for themselves. Because as a project manager, you move from one project to another, and you want to ensure that you are setting up the next person for success and not for failure. And if there's something that they forgot, or if there is something that the project team has forgotten to include as part of the closure document, then that's very hard. So it's really collating and ensuring that you have everything as part of your quality control, as part of your quality assurance when you close the project. But that's very subjective.
Interesting. All right. Next, what was your most memorable experience as a project manager?
I think the most memorable experience would be being able to deal with people from different countries and different cultures. I never expected that project management would allow me to talk to someone on the other side of the world and to talk to different people all at the same time. So it's really exciting. You get to learn about people, you get to learn about their backgrounds, their lives, their stories, and you get to share a part of yourself from that. And that's part of the learning process, the learning orientation that we have. We grow as people, we grow as professionals, we grow as project managers. So being able to work with different people, being able to go to different places, see different offices, cultures, different organizations, how they work with projects is actually very memorable. So all those things together, bundle them up, and that's what the most memorable part is.
All right, interesting. Next, how do you go about a situation where a team member fails to deliver his or her task well?
Tricky question. So when identifying a task, there has to be your measure of success specific to that task. When can you say that a task is complete? This is one of the old ways of thinking. So if that were the case, and I'm answering it specific to that, come up with what is it that we agreed upon at the start and why did we not do it well? However, in many organizations now, or at least in many schools of thought in project management, coming up with a task actually pushes you to embrace failure, such that your whatever feedback or inputs that you get from whoever your customer would be or your shareholders, you're actually encouraged to fail at the start for you to be able to come up with a much better product or task. So that's a very interesting / tricky way to answer a question, but generally work together with whoever the team member is for you to be able to come up with a better, if not the best solution or the best task that you need to come up with.
All right, excellent. Okay, for our next question, suppose the customer is not happy about the quality of the project outcomes. How do you handle the situation? What is your way of handling an unhappy stakeholder?
And that's the importance of having your sign-offs as well as your approvals, your authorization, as well as your exit criteria. What will make these things really acceptable? They are part of a contract or part of a binding legal document. That's one way to ensure that you are protected as well as the customer/shareholder being protected in that sense that you would know how things are. That being said, there are, when we talk about issues, there are different types of issues. Usually if it's a showstopper or a real high-level issue that needs to be completed, that the product or project will not really function if that's not working, then that has to be addressed. If that has to be addressed, we go back to our constraints. Does it incorporate additional cost, time? Do you reduce your scope? Or do you do something? How does that work? Then it becomes part of a change request. So you really apply all these things, put them all together, and then work with whoever the unhappy stakeholder is, and sometimes find out why he or she is unhappy. Many times, being unhappy is due to aesthetics and not being part of the exit criteria that you have defined or identified as part of the starting phase of the project, therefore making it all the more important to do that. However, that being said, in terms of coming up with your agile way of thinking in project management, if the customer or the stakeholder isn't happy, find out why and what is it that we need to improve such that in the next iteration, we'd be able to address that. But usually that comes up at the early part before you actually come up with a final deliverable that needs to be provided.
Right. Thank you for your answer. Our next question is, what's the best way to evaluate your project? As a project head, how do you get your team members to effectively evaluate you?
So, two ways to answer this. The first one is your retrospective, your lessons learned. It's a project team activity. It's not just one person's activity. You can have your own personal introspection and then bring that up during the project meeting on lessons learned, what went well, what could improve. So you do that. Usually it's best to have someone who is not part of the original project team to facilitate the lessons learned session for you to be able to extract everything. Or sometimes it's good that the project manager is not there. It really depends on what the culture is of the country, industry, or organization. So you can do that. You can also come up with surveys, or what we usually come up with in many of our surveys or projects is we come up with a net promoter score. Are you happy with what you have? Rate it from 1 to 10, why or why not, and that's it. And then that actually serves as your input for you to be able to understand how is it that you can improve, what is it that can be done. And it goes back to what some of the earlier questions, know what your customer really wants, because sometimes if a customer says this, then it usually is because they're the end users, or is it something that's just aesthetic or something that can be put aside. So you should be able to work with that as being part of the project team, being a project manager. And that is actually where you come up with your decisions as a project team.
Wonderful. All right. Our next question, we have, how do you ensure effective cross-project improvement if there are a lot of different people involved? How challenging is the turnover process, and how can this be improved?
All right, let's go first with the cost. Project managers are accountable for the cost, and there's a difference in accountability and responsibility. In bigger organizations, you would have a finance person to ensure and keep you in check of how you are with your project spending. And you usually have your boss telling you, oops, you're overspending. Hey, why are you not spending? So there's that threshold depending on which organization we're working with / working for. So that's one aspect. In smaller organizations, the project manager is the one ensuring that the costs are met. So a project manager has to ensure that the time spent by a person on a specific task is actually managed properly. Therefore, a project manager should be able to insist and communicate that the teams work smartly, not as hard as they should. Working smart is different from working hard. That's one way to answer that. There are many other ways to answer that question. And then that's the first part. The second part of your question is your turnover. A turnover usually is saying, all right, Andrew, I give you this. That's it. Bye-bye. Of course, you would say no, but in that sense, there's usually a checklist. These are the things that we would need to hand over. Let's talk about it. These are the open issues. Here's what needs to be done. Here are the next steps. Andrew usually sign off on these. And then with that, we can close the project. I turn over all the documents. Here's where the project archives are. If you have any questions, call me. Most IT projects have your hypercare or your post live support, which is 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the contract. So that there's always that. It usually boils down to communicating and ensuring that you have everything aligned with whoever your stakeholders are.
All right, wonderful, delightful. Next, how has the new normal affected your work as a project manager? How do you envision your project management office in the near future?
Okay, it's quite interesting to note that I grew up in a virtual environment. So my first job, my boss was already based in the US. So this was back in 2007. So do your computation, you'd be able to compute how old I am. So there, has it changed in terms of that? My answer is not really, in a sense that I'm used to talking to people over the phone, over Zoom. It used to be Skype, then Zoom or whatever system what is available to the specific company. It was at that point as well that travel was sort of being discouraged, so that you can cut on costs and save instead of spending. That's one way that it has started in the mid 2000s. With the new normal, I think more people now are used to having calls and meetings via Zoom, virtually. So we're no longer the weird ones. I used to get laughed at when I talk to my clients and stakeholders online. It's also affected us in a way that many of the smaller organizations have embraced this. So specific to our organization, it's coming up with your hybrid solution as to being in the office or not and working it out. But again, it all boils down to communicating properly with your different stakeholders, with your project team members, and as a whole. So I hope that answered your question.
It sure did. All right. For our next question, we have, how do you keep your team members motivated amidst these uncertain times?
That's very interesting. A project manager usually does not have direct reports. So that means as a project manager, as we mentioned in the talk earlier, you get people from different organizations, different departments, different functions. So they usually have a boss, and you're the odd man out in the sense that you work with them, but they don't report to you. So you have to be able to have your interpersonal relationships. You need to be able to be firm yet gentle. You need to be able to communicate properly and know how each person gets motivated, what makes him or her smile, what makes him or her angry. So you need to be able to spend a lot of time with that. How does that affect us in the new normal? Maybe more one-on-ones, having your e-Numan sessions, sending out some chocolates, and then you eat them together at the same time, buying coffee, and then drinking them together at the same time virtually. So all those things, so many ways to do that. Building rapport outside the office, outside work hours is a great way to become friends, and ensuring that you know that while you're friends outside work, you still need to be able to do and come up with this deliverable and or task.
Right, wonderful. All right. Now for our last question. Any last piece of advice for aspiring project managers?
Go for it. The only way to become good in project management, as in many, many things in life, is to actually do project management. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is actually one way for you to be able to succeed in the future.
Wonderful. All right. So once again, thank you so much, Mr. Chan, for the insightful session. All right, so a big thank you again to our speaker for today's talk. We greatly appreciate your time to talk about project management. We look forward to applying what you just taught us in our own career journey. Now, as a token of gratitude, we hereby present our Certificate of Appreciation. UP CAPES presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Mr. Chan for imparting his valuable insights and inspirations as our guest speaker for the Project Management Talk of the Career Development Month, given this 26th day of November 2020. All right. Again, thank you to our speaker for imparting your knowledge on project management.
Thank you.
All right. That officially concludes our session today. Thank you everyone for joining us. This event wouldn't be possible without our company partners. Career Development Month 2020 is co-presented by UP CAPES and INKOMPASS in partnership with Accenture, Analog Devices, JPMorgan Chase and Company, Maxim Integrated, Mondelēz Philippines, Nestlé Philippines, Texas Instruments Philippines Incorporated, and Unilever Philippines. So a big thank you to everyone for attending Career Development Month 2020. We hope to see you again in the next UP CAPES events. Once again, I am Andrew, and have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.